Imagine someone hands you, like, a winning lottery ticket. Not just $1 million, but $500 billion in guaranteed cash.
Half a trillion? Yeah, that is a massive ticket.
Right. But there is a massive catch. To actually collect that money, you have to take out a terrifyingly huge loan right this very second and spend every single penny of it building a factory before you see a dime of those winnings. Do you take the deal?
Wow. I mean, it is the ultimate corporate anxiety dream, You have more guaranteed business than you could possibly know what to do with, but you are bleeding cash today just to make tomorrow happen.
Exactly. And Oracle is living that exact nightmare right now, or, well, dream, depending on who you ask.
Very true.
Because following their Q3 fiscal 2026 earnings report from early March 2026, we are looking at a company sitting on a staggering $553 billion backlog.
Which is just an astronomical number.
It is over 10 times its current annual revenue. Yet the stock is sitting 48% below its all-time high, and free cash flow turned negative for the very first time in the company's entire history.
Yeah, so our mission for this deep dive is to really untangle what might be the single biggest paradox at the heart of one of tech's oldest giants.
And it really is a paradox.
It is. The core tension here is figuring out whether Oracle is successfully building the undisputed infrastructure for the AI future, or, if they are just digging themselves into a catastrophic debt crater.
And to figure that out, we really have to look at the sheer whiplash of their 5-year trajectory. Because if you just look at a snapshot of today, the panic on Wall Street doesn't seem to match the underlying reality.
No, it doesn't at all. The 5-year window is crucial here. Over that time, the stock essentially doubled, going from $71 to $146.
Which sounds great on paper.
Right. Doubling your money over 5 years is a really solid return. But that start and end point completely masks the wild ride in the middle.
Oh, absolutely.
The stock actually peaked at $283 in August of 2025, fueled by this massive AI hype cycle, before suffering a brutal 48% crash to get back down to that 146 level today.
So basically, if you bought 5 years ago, you're buying a boat. But if you bought in August 2025, you are deeply underwater.
Exactly.
But the underlying earnings story completely contradicts that 48% stock crash. Because over that same 5-year period, their trailing 12-month operating profit actually grew by 32% steadily.
Yeah, it went from $15.5 billion to $20.5 billion.
So the actual money the business makes from its core operations didn't crash at all. It just kept chugging upward.
Right, and that steady profit growth paired with a crashing stock price leads to a massive valuation compression. The price-to-earnings ratio, the PE, shrank from a high of 44x all the way down to 23x.
Wow, so it nearly got cut in half.
Yeah. So mathematically, the stock is actually cheaper right now relative to its earnings than it has been in years, even though business fundamentals are, well, demonstrably stronger.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because to me it sounds like a restaurant with a line out the door and around the block, right?
Sure.
They're serving the best food they've ever made. But the owner is maxing out 10 credit cards just to buy enough ovens to feed everyone. Are they about to be billionaires or go bankrupt?
That is the perfect analogy. And to figure out why they need all those proverbial ovens, we have to kind of open the hood and look at the engine room.
Right, because they aren't the same company anymore.
Not at all. How Oracle actually makes its money today is vastly different from a decade ago. They are no longer just the legacy on-premise database company that, dominated the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, the shift here is total. We are looking at a massive pivot to cloud services.
Absolutely.
This includes OCI, which is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, plus their suite of applications like Fusion ERP for big enterprise resource planning, NetSuite for small businesses, and Cerner for healthcare data.
And that cloud segment now makes up 54% of their total revenue.
Over half.
Yeah, over half. It is a $29 billion business on its own, and it just grew 24% year over year.
That's huge. But while they are pouring all these resources into growing that cloud business, they still have this incredible high-margin safety net keeping the lights on, right?
They do. Their license support segment brings in $10.5 billion, which is about 19% of their total revenue.
And that's basically just software updates and tech support for their legacy database customers.
Essentially, yes. It acts as a highly reliable, recurring annuity.
Yeah.
I mean, the margins on software updates are astronomical because it costs almost nothing to distribute code you've already written.
Pure profit, basically.
Almost. And that $10.5 billion provides the massive cash base they need to fund their cloud ambitions. It's built on 40 years of database lock-in.
Okay, let's talk about that lock-in for a minute. A lot of people call it a moat, but how deep is it really?
Well, changing an enterprise database isn't just like swapping out a hard drive. It is like trying to change the central nervous system of a living organism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every single application in a Fortune 500 company, HR, payroll, inventory, logistics, is wired directly into Oracle's specific code structure. Pulling the Oracle database out literally paralyzes the company.
That sounds terrifying for an IT department.
It is. The switching costs are so astronomical and the risk of data loss so terrifying that once Oracle is embedded in a massive corporation, they essentially never leave.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because even with that nervous system lock-in for the database, when we look at the pure infrastructure side, the actual servers and compute power, their market share is still tiny compared to the big three, AWS, Azure, and Google.
Oh, absolutely.
So isn't calling it a moat a bit generous when you're the smallest fish in the hyperscaler pond?
Well, in the pure infrastructure game, Oracle is definitely the smallest fish, but their moat isn't about being the biggest overall cloud. It's about offering a uniquely unified platform where they own the database, the infrastructure, and the apps all together.
So it's an all-in-one package.
Right. They are irreplaceable for specific mission-critical workloads. However, they know cloud infrastructure is a volume game. And to survive, they have to scale up.
Right, you need massive scale.
Exactly. Because they are the smallest fish, they are currently on an absolute AI infrastructure binge to catch up.
And the volume numbers here are hard to even wrap your head around. Their OCI AI infrastructure revenue just grew 243% year over year.
Which is just staggering growth.
It is. And to power that, they have secured over 10 gigawatts of data center power capacity.
We really need to pause on that 10 gigawatts number.
Yeah, please put that into perspective for us.
Okay, so a single gigawatt is roughly enough to power 750,000 homes. And Oracle has secured 10 of them.
Wait, really? Millions of homes worth of power.
Yes.
Really?
And securing 10 gigawatts isn't just about, buying servers and plugging them in. You are literally negotiating with regional power grids, navigating years of zoning permits, and tapping into nuclear and massive renewable sources.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is incredibly complex. In a world where electrical grids are already strained, hoarding 10 gigawatts of power capacity is an incredibly aggressive strategic land grab.
It is a total land grab.
Yeah.
And they are embedding what they call agentic AI across over 1,000 of their Fusion Cloud applications to utilize all that compute.
Right.
But the craziest growth number isn't the AI infrastructure. It's the multi-cloud database explosion. That specific segment is growing at 531% year over year.
Yeah, 531%. It's almost hard to believe.
It is, because Oracle is actively running its absolute crown jewel database on competitor clouds. They are putting it on Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS.
And this is a seismic shift in strategy. I mean, for decades, Oracle and AWS were locked in this bitter, highly public rivalry. The idea of Oracle software running natively on an Amazon server was just unthinkable.
Unthinkable.
But Oracle looked at the landscape and realized they might not win the war to get every single customer onto Oracle's physical servers. So they compromised. They said, fine, we will let the customer use AWS servers, but we absolutely refuse to let the customer run their data on anyone else's software.
So what does this all mean? By putting their database on rival clouds, that's almost like McDonald's setting up a drive-through window inside a Burger King.
That is a great way to picture it.
Right. It's brilliant because it unlocks customers who would absolutely never migrate to Oracle's own physical cloud infrastructure.
Exactly.
They're getting the software sales without having to convince a die-hard AWS shop to switch platforms.
But why on earth would AWS or Azure allow this? Aren't they just letting a Trojan horse into their data centers?
They absolutely are, but AWS and Azure are desperate for the massive compute workloads that AI demands.
Ah, so they need the business too.
Right. If a Fortune 500 company says, hey, we want to run massive AI models on AWS, but our data is stuck in an Oracle database and we won't move it, AWS has a choice.
What's the choice? They can either lose the massive compute contract entirely, or they can let Oracle into the building to handle the data layer. AWS wants the compute revenue badly enough to let the Trojan horse in.
Wow. And this multi-cloud Trojan horse, combined with the AI data center build-out, is what generated that jaw-dropping $553 billion remaining performance obligation backlog.
Yeah, the RPO. For anyone unfamiliar with the term, a remaining performance obligation, or RPO, is essentially an IOU from a customer.
Okay, and high OU.
Right. It is a signed contract for revenue that hasn't been recognized on the income statement yet because Oracle hasn't actually delivered the service. The customer has promised to pay, but Oracle has to build the server capacity to host them first.
So it's guaranteed future money.
Exactly. $500 billion of it waiting in the wings.
But a $500 billion backlog doesn't pay for data centers today. If the backlog is that massive and the multi-cloud growth is 531%, we really have to talk about what actually broke the market's trust in late 2025 and early 2026.
This is where the hypergrowth collides violently with physical reality.
Yeah. In Q1 of fiscal 2026, which ended in August 2025, we saw peak euphoria. The stock hit that all-time high of $283.
Everyone was bought in.
Right. The narrative that Oracle was a dominant AI player was accepted as gospel. But then, the bill for those 10 gigawatts of data centers came due.
And that brings us to the Q2 2026 wobble. The stock drops 31% in a single quarter.
31%.
Yeah, and what's wild is that revenue actually grew 14%. The core business was doing great.
So why the panic?
Because Wall Street looked under the hood and realized that free cash flow had turned deeply negative. Specifically, it dropped to negative 67% of operating profit.
We really need to draw a hard line between operating profit and free cash flow here, because this is the entire crux of the panic, right?
It absolutely is. Operating profit is what the core software business makes on paper before you account for massive capital investments. Free cash flow is the actual tangible cash left in the bank account after you've paid for everything, including the billions of dollars required to build out concrete, steel, and servers for new data centers.
So they were literally draining their bank accounts faster than the software business could refill them.
Exactly. And Wall Street hates uncertainty when it comes to cash.
They really do. And then we get to Q3 of fiscal 2026, ending in February 2026, and the bottom completely falls out. The stock drops another 25%, plummeting all the way down to $147.
And the paradox deepens in Q3, because in the exact same quarter where the stock crashed, revenue growth hit its highest rate, yet 22%.
Wait, so the business is accelerating faster than ever?
Yes, but the free cash flow plunged even further, down to negative 120% of operating profit.
This is the terrifying drop on the roller coaster. They're generating over $20 billion in operating profit on paper, yet spending so heavily on AI data centers that they are bleeding cash.
Bleeding cash at a historic rate.
If you're an investor, at what exact point do you stop cheering for 22% revenue growth and start panicking about a $50 billion debt load?
And that brings us right to the $50 billion problem.
Ugh.
To plug this massive, gaping hole in their cash flow, Oracle had to go to the markets and raise $50 billion in financing in February 2026.
That is a huge raise.
It is. They issued $30 billion in standard bonds, but they also had to utilize mandatory convertible securities.
Hold on, let's break down mandatory convertible securities, because that just sounds like Wall Street jargon for we are in big trouble.
It kind of is. It is essentially a break glass in case of emergency financing tool. A mandatory convertible is a loan that forces the lender to accept Oracle stock instead of cash when it's time to pay it back.
Oh, I see.
Companies usually issue these when they are desperate to protect whatever cash they have left. The downside is that when those loans convert, it floods the market with new shares, diluting the value of the stock for existing shareholders.
So it's a defensive move that signals severe cash flow anxiety.
Exactly. And because of this $50 billion raise, their debt-to-EBITDA ratio spiked to 4.6x.
And EBITDA is basically a company's raw earning power, right? Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right. It's how much cash the engine produces before the accountants get involved. Now, for a massive tech company, a healthy, safe leverage ratio is generally considered to be around 3.5x.
So 4.6x is way over the line.
Hitting 4.6x sets off every single alarm bell on Wall Street. Management claims they are fully committed to maintaining an investment-grade credit rating, but when your leverage is at historic highs, there's zero margin for error.
Right. If execution slips or if a data center rollout is delayed, that debt transforms from a tool for growth into a suffocating anchor.
Absolutely.
So the battle lines are officially drawn. On one side, you have incredible accelerating growth of 22% and a $500 billion backlog. On the other side, you have terrifying debt levels and deeply negative cash flow.
It's a massive tug of war.
So how do these competing forces actually move the stock?
Well, the financial landscape uses a fascinating six-metric scorecard to track exactly how Oracle trades. And what's revealing is that Oracle historically almost always fails the debt metric.
Really?
Yeah, out of the last 22 quarters, they've only passed the safe debt threshold twice. The market constantly assigns them a leverage penalty because they habitually run hot with debt.
But Wall Street's current reaction is what's blowing my mind. Because in the software industry, investors obsess over a metric called the R40.
Right, the rule of 40.
Yeah, it is simply your revenue growth rate plus your operating profit margin. If those two numbers add up to 40 or higher, you are considered an elite software company. Right now, Oracle's R40 is at 54%.
Which is incredible.
This is the highest in Oracle's entire corporate history.
Hitting 54% at Oracle's massive scale is a monumental achievement in operational efficiency. I mean, it means they are growing rapidly while remaining highly profitable on an operating basis.
Wait, so you're telling me their core growth and margin metric is literally the best it has ever been in their entire corporate history, but the stock is being treated like a bargain bin special?
Pretty much.
The PE ratio remains near the bottom at 23x. The market is just ignoring the growth and punishing the capital structure. It really comes down to a staring contest. Whoever blinks first, the debt or the revenue, decides the future of the company.
The market is absolutely in a show-me phase, and there is a single glaring catalyst that will end this staring contest, and that is a free cash flow inflection.
Okay, an inflection.
Yeah, the market doesn't expect Oracle to pay off $50 billion in debt tomorrow. They just need Oracle to prove that the peak spending phase is finally behind them.
So they need to prove the factory is built and the ovens are on.
Precisely. If Q4 of fiscal 2026 or Q1 of fiscal 2027 shows positive free cash flow, it removes the massive bear argument instantly. It would signal that the data centers are built, the heavy lifting is done, and they are finally starting to print cash from that massive RPO backlog.
But there are immense risks hanging over that timeline, right?
Yeah.
If the macroeconomic environment gets shaky, or if new international tariffs disrupt the tech hardware supply chain, enterprise clients might panic and delay their cloud migrations.
Exactly. And if those migrations get delayed, that $553 billion backlog takes much longer to convert into actual cash in the bank. Oracle still has to pay the interest on the $50 billion debt, even if the customer delays the project.
And there's an even bigger existential risk here, which is an industry-wide slowdown in AI capital expenditure. The entire bull case for Oracle assumes that the demand for AI infrastructure is insatiable and permanent.
Right.
But what if it's cyclical? What if the massive hyperscalers, AWS, Google, Microsoft, realize they've overbuilt and just slow down their spending?
That is the big fear. Because Oracle is the smallest of the big four cloud providers, any pullback in AI spending hits them disproportionately hard.
They don't have the buffer the others do.
No, they don't have the massive e-commerce cushion of an Amazon or the immense office software monopoly of a Microsoft to absorb a market shock. If the music stops on AI infrastructure, Oracle is left holding a very expensive bag.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's distill this deep dive down to the absolute core for you. Oracle is a company executing a seemingly impossible balancing act.
They really are.
On one hand, they are delivering accelerating revenue growth of 22%, holding a record-breaking $553 billion backlog, and expanding cloud margins. Plus, their multi-cloud strategy is exploding.
But on the other hand, to achieve that, they are burning through cash at an unprecedented rate, hitting negative 120% free cash flow to operating profit and carrying a massive 4.6x debt ratio.
It is the ultimate tension between the massive promise of tomorrow and the incredibly expensive bill due today. Which leaves us with a final, lingering question for you to chew on.
And it's a big one.
If Oracle's multi-cloud strategy works out, it means they have successfully convinced their biggest, most terrifying rivals, AWS, Azure, Google, to actually host and distribute Oracle's most profitable software for them.
Which would be one of the greatest strategic maneuvers in tech history.
But if the AI infrastructure bubble pops before that $553 billion backlog actually converts to cash flow in the bank, does Oracle go down in history as the biggest, most over-leveraged casualty of the 2020s AI arms race?
It's a real possibility.
Remember that winning lottery ticket we talked about at the very beginning? Oracle is standing outside the lottery office right now, holding a $50 billion loan document in one hand and a $500 billion ticket in the other. We are all just waiting to see if the door is actually open. It is a massive multi-billion-dollar cliffhanger for you to keep an eye on.